Hi and welcome to another live class 12 of level B1 or intermediate level. And before we begin, let's see who we've got in the chat. We've got Miguel Cortez, we've got Jorge Antonio Baños, Gloria from Spain, Blanca, Javier from Spain, Gloria from Spain. Who else? Francescoli from Peru. Hi to everybody. And in today's class, we're going, Nidia, Claudio, anybody else? No, I think that's it for now. Oh yeah, Yami from Mexico. Okay, let's get on with the class. Today we're going to be looking at adjectives. Gradable, or today we're going to begin looking at adjectives. Let's put this here. I need to remember not to cover the text every single class. I forget because I can't see clearly. Let me just move this so I can see it, so that I can make sure I'm not covering the text. So the theme of today's class, hi, Juan from Colombia. The theme of today's class is gradable and ungradable adjectives. Gradable and ungradable adjectives. So first of all, everybody should know what an adjective is. An adjective is a word that can tell us more about a noun or qualify a noun. So here we have an adjective. To begin the class, we have this adjective cold. Cold. Everybody, I think, should know what cold means. It's cold. Actually, here where I live, it's not cold, it's hot. Hot is another adjective. It's cold, it's hot. Right now, here where I am, it's not cold. Let's make this a bit bigger. It's hot. But both of these, as you know, are adjectives. So here, we are using adjectives after the verb be. After the verb be. The verb be here is contracted. Just let me check my sound because I forgot to check my sound today. So let's just see if I can. Yeah, it's okay. Cold and hot are adjectives. Adjectives. So, and here we're using these adjectives after the verb be. It is cold, but people don't say it is cold. They say it's cold or it's hot. Another way, of course, that we can use adjectives in English is before the noun. It is a hot day, which of course in some languages, for example in Spanish, it's the other way round. You have the noun followed by the adjective, but in English we need to put the adjective first. It is a hot day. It's a hot day. So these type of adjectives, cold and hot, this type of adjectives are called gradable adjectives, and that means we can grade them. How can we grade them? We can add to those adjectives. Let's move this out of the way a bit, sorry. We can add to these adjectives an adverb. Here are some adverbs that we can use with these gradable adjectives. With gradable adjectives, we can add an adverb of degree. So here we have some adverbs of degree that we can use with these gradable adjectives. Let's put these in red. So instead of, we can say it's hot. We can say it's hot, or we can say, we can use an adverb in front of that. We can say it's slightly hot. Probably we wouldn't use slightly, but it's slight. We wouldn't use slightly with the weather, but we maybe with something else. But we can do it. According to the grammar rules, we can say it's slightly hot, or we can say it's a bit hot. Let's put it in another thing. We can say it's a bit hot, or sometimes, or a little hot, or we might even say it's a little bit hot. Here I'm using this adverb to grade the hot. If I say it's a little bit hot, that means it's not as, here is hot. Let's say hot is, if we say hot is 30 degrees. 30 degrees is hot. 25 degrees, okay, it's a little bit hot. It's not too hot. Or we could say it's very hot. It's very hot, using the adverb very. It's very hot. If we say that hot is 30 degrees, we could say very hot is 33 degrees. We could say it's extremely hot, and then that would be maybe 35 degrees. It's terribly hot, maybe 38 degrees. And it's incredibly hot, maybe 40 degrees. It's not precise. But all of these adverbs here, we can use to give different levels, different grades to the adjective hot. Hot is 30 degrees, a little bit hot is 25 degrees, incredibly hot is 40 degrees. So this type of adjective, cold and hot, are gradable. Is very hot. I did put very here too. But we have another type of adjective which is not gradable. This is an ungradable adjective. Here we have an ungradable adjective, freezing. Or if we're, freezing means it's very cold. Or if we wanted to say it's very hot, we could say it's boiling. Means it's very hot. Well, literally, freezing means below 0 degrees centigrade. And boiling means is when the water turns to gas. It's 100 degrees, or when the water turns to steam. The literal meaning of freezing and boiling is, freezing is when the water turns to ice at 0 degrees centigrade, and boiling is when water turns to steam at 100 degrees centigrade, if you're at sea level. But here we're not necessarily using if we say, what's the weather like? Oh, it's freezing. It's not necessarily literal. It just means it's very cold. What's the weather like where you live? It's boiling. Obviously, it cannot be, if it were boiling, if the weather really was 100 degrees centigrade, people would be dying. Nobody could survive. But sometimes if people ask about the weather, they say, oh, it's boiling. It's an exaggeration. It's not literal. It means it's boiling means it's very hot. Or maybe it's the same thing as saying it's extremely hot, it's boiling. Or it's extremely cold, or it's very cold, it's freezing. So when we have these type of adjectives, ungradable adjectives like freezing or boiling, these type of adjectives are what we can say is gradable adjectives, normal adjectives, gradable or normal adjectives, cold or hot. But ungradable adjectives, or another way we could describe them, is as extreme adjectives. We cannot use these adverbs of, we cannot use these here. You can't use those with these here, with the ungradable adjectives. If we want to add an adverb to an ungradable adjective, we need to use one of these adverbs here, sorry. The adverbs we've got here are, for example, absolutely, 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 completely, utterly, totally. These adverbs you can use with ungradable adjectives like freezing and boiling. And these adverbs, slightly, a bit, a little, very, extremely, terribly, incredibly, we use with the normal adjectives or the gradable adjectives. So here I could say it's, well, normally, yeah, I wouldn't actually use it with this totally freezing. I could say something like ridiculous, maybe. Ridiculous. Sorry, I spelled that wrong. Ridiculous means it's very silly or very stupid. Very silly, maybe silly. Silly is a word that is like a gradable adjective. Here I could say it's completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. Completely. I think I've spelled completely wrong now. Completely. Yeah, completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous is like it's extremely silly or very silly. So when I have an ungradable adjective and I want to use an adverb, I need to use one of these. I cannot use these. Okay, one adverb that we can use with both gradable and ungradable adjectives is the adverb really. So if you don't remember the rules, you can always use really. It's really ridiculous. It's really hot. We can use really with gradable and ungradable. Before we continue with this subject, if anybody has any questions, just put your questions in the chat. Before we continue, I have some words down here which are slightly related to this subject. But I've noticed when I'm teaching English that some people have problems with these words here. Let's move this out of the way, or try and move this out of the way. The words that I have here are, yeah, I think I need to move this too. Let's move this down here. Let's get rid of that. There. And that there, and then let's move this up here. So I put these here too. They're sort of related to this subject, but I've noticed that some people have problems, get confused about these three words: terrible, terrific, and terribly. When I've been teaching English in the past, I noticed some people have problems with these words. So the first one, terrible, is an adjective. It's an ungradable adjective. It's an ungradable adjective, which means very bad. What a terrible movie. What a terrible movie. Very bad. Terrible means very bad. It's an adjective. And terrific is an adjective which means the opposite. It means excellent or very good. It's another ungradable adjective. What a terrific movie. And terribly is not an adjective. It's an adverb which means, it's an adverb of degree which means very. So it would go with the adverbs that I put like down here. Slightly a bit, it is actually already there, terribly. So terribly is like very. So terrible is an adjective which means very bad. It's an ungradable adjective. Terrific is an ungradable adjective which means very good. And terribly is an adverb which means very. Don't get confused between those three. What does utterly mean? Utterly, totally, completely, absolutely is more or less synonymous. They're more or less synonymous. You know, it's the utterly ridiculous, completely ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, totally ridiculous. So yeah, it's synonymous. These four here are more or less synonymous. Certainly completely, utterly and totally are synonymous, and absolutely more or less, yeah. Any other questions? No other questions. So let's go to the next page and let's look at some more adjectives, gradable and ungradable adjectives. So on this page I've got the same words up there that you can lose. This is the main thing here. I have some sentences here. All of these sentences contain an ungradable adjective. Let me put that up there. All of these sentences contain an ungradable adjective. So what I want you to do is in the chat tell me what is the gradable adjective, or another word for ungradable adjectives is extreme adjectives. What is the normal adjective? Let's make all this bigger. Yeah, I'm just checking to see if it's visible. This bit here doesn't matter too much. Let's make it bigger if we can, in case people are on the cell phone. So all of these here, the first one is the car. That car is tiny. Tiny. Can anybody tell me tiny is an ungradable adjective or an extreme adjective? Can anybody tell me? Can anybody tell me what is the normal adjective of tiny? And Joseph Del Pin has broken the rule. Remember the rule in this class. Yeah. So, little, the car is little. Yeah, little could be little. I was thinking of another word that begins with what's another word like little? It's okay, Joseph. Thanks. Small. Small, yeah. Small or little. So when we say tiny, what does tiny mean? Tiny is the same as saying very small or very little. The food was delicious. The food was delicious. 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 Delicious is a ungradable adjective. Yeah, Joseph, very good, Joseph. Tasty. Tasty, yeah. Delicious means the same as very tasty. Here we have the normal adjectives. Let's put them in green. Here we have the blue ones are the extreme adjectives or the ungradable adjectives, and the green ones are the normal adjectives. Delicious, very tasty. Yeah, where you missed the T. He was furious. Furious. What's the normal adjective for furious? Furious means very angry. Well, you made a mistake with the spelling. Yeah, angry, and actually, yeah, angry. Angry is the correct word. Somebody there put mad. Yeah, mad in American English. Actually, mad in British English. Mad in American English is angry. But when we say mad in British English, it's more like crazy. Well, crazy really is American English. So in American English, mad means angry. US, United States, and in British English, mad means crazy. In British English, let's put UK. So there's a difference between American and British English. So yeah, here we can put angry or mad. Furious, he was very mad. Can you say very mad? Maybe. He was very mad, or he was very angry. I would say very angry. The next one then. I'm terrified of heights. Terrified of heights. Terrified. Yeah, mad, nuts. Melissa says mad is like nuts. Yes, and nuts is, little things that you eat that come off the tree. But sometimes people say nuts, mad, crazy, nuts. Can't change that. Oh, it's because I've got this open. Where was I? Yeah, the blue one here. Heights. I'm sorry, I've done heights. That's the noun, sorry. Let's put that back to black. The adjective here is terrified. 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 Very scared or frightened. Very good, Joseph, because he put both. There are two adjectives, or frightened, which are more or less synonymous. What's going on with my frightened? Scared or frightened? Terrified, very scared or very frightened. And that's another word which we saw earlier, we saw on the previous page. Remember here we saw terrible, terrific. Terribly is another one that people get confused. Terrified. Terrified means very frightened or very scared. Let's have a look at the next one. Let's move my camera a little bit. What are we on? I've just run a marathon and I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. What does exhausted means? Yeah, very tired. Exhausted means very tired. Very tired. Very tired. And the next one we have is it's boiling. Maybe I should have said here the weather is boiling. It would be better to say that, I think. The weather is boiling in Mexico. Boiling, one we saw earlier. What does it mean when we say boiling? It means it's very hot. It's very hot. Very hot. The next one we have is I haven't eaten all day. I'm starving. I'm starving. What does starving mean? Starving. Starving. Hungry. Yeah. Starving means very hungry. And incidentally, don't get hungry, and a lot of people get hungry mixed up with angry. Here this is hungry, and earlier on we saw angry. Angry, hungry. Angry is like furious, and hungry is like starving. Hungry is when you want to eat food. The next one we have is enormous. Enormous. Enormous is, yeah, big, large. Joseph put 3, yeah, big or large. Very big or very large. Those are normal adjectives. And giant, actually, giant, very giant. No, giant is an ungradable adjective. So actually there are quite a few adjectives which are synonymous with enormous. We have enormous. What else do we have? We have giant. Giant. Sorry. Giant. What else do we have? Huge is another one. Huge, enormous, giant, huge, gigantic. I think there's probably some more. Enormous, giant, huge, gigantic. Some people say ginormous. I don't know if that's in the dictionary, I guess so. Ginormous. All of those are more or less synonymous. I guess ginormous is even bigger. But they're all ungradable adjectives. The next one we have here is the water is freezing. The water is freezing. The water is freezing. Freezing means, yeah, cold. If we say it's freezing, we mean it's very cold. Very cold. It's very cold. The next adjective we have is filthy. Filthy. Maybe that's a bit difficult to pronounce that word. Filthy. 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 You need to wash your car, it's filthy. And Joseph, the bin has already put dirty. Yeah, very dirty. Very dirty. Your car is very dirty. You need to watch it. It's filthy. 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 This class is great. This class is great. Great is an adjective. Great is an adjective. What's the normal adjective? Amazing, phenomenal. Well, amazing and phenomenal, marvelous, fantastic, they are all ungradable adjectives like great. So what we need here is the normal adjective. I put those ones over here too. Yeah, we've got some people have put other adjectives in here. Nice, awesome. So great, fantastic, marvelous, very good, amazing, amazing, and phenomenal. I think phenomenal is PH in English. I can't remember now. Great, fantastic, marvelous, amazing, awesome is more American English, not so common in Britain. All of these adjectives are ungradable adjectives. They're more or less synonymous, more or less. So what is the normal adjective for these? Somebody put nice. Not really. No, nice is a normal adjective, but nice has a different meaning. Nice is, if we just go over to the dictionary for a minute, nice definition. Remember, you can always look up words in the dictionary. Pleasant, agreeable, satisfactory. So nice doesn't actually mean the same thing. So can anyone, very good, yeah, very good, Javier, very good, because the answer, the normal adjective of those adjectives there really is good. Very good. This is the normal adjective. Great, fantastic, marvelous, amazing, awesome. It's good. Hi, Jonathan. Then we have two more. The next one, I put these together. They're more or less synonymous. We already saw terrible. And awful is more or less synonymous with terrible. And we already have the answer from Nydia and Tanya. Very bad. Very bad. And finally, the last one we have is fascinating. 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 Where's my fascinating? Can anybody tell me the normal adjective? Incredible. No, incredible is more like with these ones here. Exciting. No, not exciting. No, I think exciting would be thrilling. Would be the ungradable adjective of exciting. Thrilling. Thrilling. Can anybody tell me fascinating? The book was fascinating. Has anybody got the adjective of that? No? Well, I think it's very interesting. Very interesting. These ones here, let's put these in green here. So there we have, I don't know how many are there. Strong adjectives and normal adjectives, or on the blue ones are the ungradable adjectives. All the blue ones are ungradable, so remember with ungradable adjectives you need to use these adverbs. Well, you don't need to use these adverbs, but you can use these adverbs if you wish. You can say, it was absolutely tiny, it was totally delicious, he was utterly furious, he was completely, or he is completely terrified, he was totally exhausted, it was absolutely boiling, I'm absolutely starving, sorry, it was utterly enormous, maybe freezing, it was absolutely freezing, your car is completely filthy. I didn't put this one here in blue. Let's make that blue. The class is absolutely great. The movie was completely terrible, and the book was completely fascinating. So if you're going to use one of these strong adjectives or ungradable adjectives, remember you're going to use these adverbs up here. Let's just make those a bit bigger because maybe you can't see them. These are the adverbs that you can use with ungradable adjectives. And remember, these ones here are the ones that you can use with the green ones, the green adjectives, which are the gradable. Slightly. It was a very small, very tasty, terribly angry, slightly scared, very tired, extremely hot, incredibly hungry, a bit large, very cold. We've already put the very one here. The other one, of course, that you can use with either is the one that we saw before, was really. Remember, really you can use with either of them. So you can say really tiny, really small, really delicious, really tasty. Really is a good choice because you can use it with everything. So before we continue, what have I got on the next page? Have I got any more? Yeah, I've got some more there. I think I'll just repeat these so you can hear the pronunciation again. That car is tiny. The food was delicious. He was furious. I'm terrified of heights. I've just run a marathon and I'm exhausted. The weather is boiling in Mexico. Yeah, I think actually that one there I should change it because I changed it earlier and it doesn't sound quite right like that. The weather in Mexico is boiling. The weather in Mexico is boiling. I haven't eaten all day and I'm starving. That house, with an E on the end, sorry, that house is enormous. The water is freezing. I'm not going to swim. You need to wash your car. It's filthy. This class is great. The movie was awful. The movie was terrible. The book was fascinating. Let's continue with this subject. So here we've got the reverse of what we just had. Let's see how many people can remember these. They're the same, I think more or less the same. I need to move that down a bit. Or maybe make my screen a little bit smaller. Yeah, I think you can see that. So when Tom discovered that someone had stolen his jacket, I think I need to make it a bit bigger. I can move them down like this. Yeah, let's make it bigger because it doesn't look very big, and make this out here. Can you still see? Yep. When Tom discovered that someone had stolen his jacket, he was very angry. He was absolutely... It's this time, here we have the normal adjective. So what do we need to put here? He was absolutely... What's the strong adjective of angry? Can anybody remember? Who's got a good memory? Who can remember things that we talked about 5 minutes ago? Furious, Melissa. Very good. Melissa has a good memory. Furious. He was absolutely furious. Derek invited 30 people to his birthday party, so he ordered a really big. How can we say really big using an ungradable adjective? In the last page we saw many. Enormous, yeah, is one. Enormous. Or another one we saw was huge. Enormous or huge. Enormous or huge. Let's put that in red. He told me he didn't do his homework because his dog had eaten his book. That's a really silly. Silly. What does silly mean? If you don't know what silly means, just take a look in your dictionary. Just go on Google and put silly definition, or if you're in another language, you could even look for it in your language. Having or showing lack of common sense or judgment, absurd or foolish. That's what silly means. So, as Melissa says, it's absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. Ridiculous, ridiculous. Good. Absolutely ridiculous, very silly. I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. Let's move those up. I'm so hungry that I could eat a horse. Actually, this one here, I'm so hungry that I could eat a horse, is un dicho. Sorry, that's Spanish. I shouldn't say Spanish. I just forgot my own rule. It's a saying. It's a saying in English. People say that when they're very hungry. It's not literal. People say, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. I'm so hungry. When you're very hungry in English, you can say that. It doesn't mean we eat horses. Yeah, starving, 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 starving. Absolutely starving, starving. Starving means very hungry. The next one, Jane's stories about trips to Africa are very interesting. They're absolutely, what was the word we saw earlier? What was the word we saw earlier for very interesting? The strong adjective for very interesting. Fascinating, yeah, somebody's got the answer there. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Notice in all of these too that I'm using the adverb absolutely. Absolutely fascinating. The air conditioner is not working and it's absolutely... If the air conditioner is a thing for making the air cooler, what would we say here? I missed the number 6 actually, but let's do number 7 first. Or, sorry, let's go back to number 6 because otherwise people are going to get confused. Sorry. Number 6. This chocolate is really tasty. 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 What's the opposite of... sorry, not the opposite. What's the strong adjective of tasty? Somebody's already put the answer. I don't know if I can get to the thing now. Yeah, tasty. I think I'm going to actually delete these ones up here because they're a bit of a problem now. And then let's move that down there. Tasty, absolutely delicious. Absolutely delicious. Absolutely delicious. The air conditioner is not working and it's absolutely, when it's very hot, what do we say? What do we say when it's very hot? When it's very hot, we say boiling. Very good. It's absolutely boiling. When it's very hot, boiling is very hot. Literally, it means water boils at 100 degrees. The water is boiling, literally. Means boiling literally means it's 100 degrees centigrade. But we're not using it literally. Like earlier we saw, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. It's not literal. Your homework this week is really bad. In fact, it's absolutely really bad. How can we say really bad with a strong adjective? How can we say really bad with a strong adjective? Who can tell me? Wrong. No. Terrible. Yeah, absolutely terrible. Very good. Or absolutely awful is another one that we saw. Absolutely terrible or absolutely awful. Very bad. Very bad. He's so tired. So tired. So, I didn't mention that before, is another adverb that we can use with gradable adjectives. So tired, it means very tired. And mainly, maybe today, it's more common for people in English to say so tired, whereas maybe 20 years ago it was more common for people to say I'm very tired. Now you hear more, especially in American English, I'm so tired. And when people say that, often they will make so longer and say, no, they don't just say so tired, they say I'm so tired. You'll hear that very common now. So hungry, so tired is very common now, especially in American English. So yeah, the strong adjective is absolutely exhausted. Absolutely exhausted. So tired. His hands, should put that in plural, his hands were so dirty. Again, I'm using so as an adverb. It's like very. His hands were so dirty. In fact, they were absolutely filthy. Gloria, very good. So, a lot of people here with good memories. So I think that's enough now of those gradable and ungradable adjectives. Let's carry on. We've still got about 15 minutes left. So the last part of the class, we want to try and look at numbers. Numbers. Let's move these down here for a minute. So we've covered numbers before in other levels, but I wanted to take a look at numbers again because sometimes people have problems with numbers. So the first problem, I'm not going to go through all the numbers. At this level, everybody should know, be able to count from 1 to 1 million. But I just wanted to go through them again because sometimes there are some areas that I've noticed when I've been teaching English over the years that are problematic. So I wanted to cover some of those areas. The first thing that a lot of people have problems with is the difference in the pronunciation between the teens and the tens. For example, the example I put here is 15 and 50. So this can be very problematic for a lot of people. You've got it's the same with 13, 30, 14, 40, 15, 50, 16, 60, 17, 70, 18, 80, and 19, 90. You need to be very careful with these. Make sure you pronounce them right. Otherwise, people could not understand you or misunderstand you, which is worse. So the important thing here is, what I always say to people is, with the teens, this is a long vowel sound, teen, e, 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 and with the 50, 50, e, 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 e. This is a short vowel sound. So when you say these ones, you need to make sure that you make this sound as long as possible. Maybe even if you're learning English, maybe even exaggerate it. 15. When you say 15, 16, 17, you need to make sure that you're smiling. If you're not smiling, 15, you're not saying it correctly. Yeah, Melissa says teenager. Yeah, it's a long vowel sound. Make sure when you say those numbers, the teens, that you are smiling. If you're not smiling, you're not saying it correctly. So that's the first problem area. Most people don't have a problem with this. 100, 200. If we have 100, we can say 100, or we can say 100. It means the same thing. After that, it's 200, 300. 753. Pay attention to the and. The and here is after the hundreds. 753. Also note that we don't say 700s. There's no S here. It's 753. And then we get the thousands. It's the same. 1,000 or 1,000. It's the same. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Again, no S on the end. 2,000, not 2,000s. Most people don't have problems with this. 1,300 is what I say. Because I'm British, 1,300, often in the United States, sometimes in Britain, but more often in the United States, they won't say it like that. They'll say 1,300, or if it's 1,400, they'll say 1,400, which can be a little bit confusing. Sometimes it's a little bit confusing for me because I'm more used to saying 1,300. You sometimes hear this in Britain too. Sometimes you will hear this form in the United States. Sometimes you will hear this form in Britain. But this is more common in the United Kingdom, Britain, and this is more common in the United States. Now this is where I think this probably is not too much of a problem. It's relatively easy. 76,000. 76,000. So we're just counting the thousands. But this is where people start to get problems. I've noticed even advanced learners sometimes have problems when we have numbers like this. So what we need to do here is we need to separate it into two parts. First of all, we have the thousands. So we're just going to read this number. Forget about this bit. Let's try and put a little box over that or something. I don't know if I can draw maybe with this. No, because I can't see the... it's difficult. Well, let's forget about that for a minute. Not very good because there's a bug in the program actually. So we're just going to start by saying this number. So it's just 567. And then, because it's in the thousands, we need to add the word thousands. So we say this bit first. 567,000. And then we just say the other bit. So we say 567,000. And then we're going to say this bit. 555. It's not really difficult, but a lot of people do have problems with it. You need to divide this bit and this bit. 567,555. Let me just write another example in here maybe after that one. Any random number, 345, 543. how would we say this number? We would say, first of all, we need to say this part here. So it's very easy. Forget about this part. We're just going to say 345. And then we need to add the word thousand. And then we want to say the other part, which is just going to be very easy, 543. So don't get confused, just split it into two parts. First of all, say the thousands, say the number, and add thousand on the end, and then say the other number. What else do we have? We have 1 million or a million, 2 million, 3 million. And the last number, again, you've got to split it this time into three numbers. First of all, we have 1 million. Then we have 545,000. And then we have 654. So we're splitting it into three parts. The first part is the million. It's very easy because it's just one. Then we have the thousands. And finally, we have the hundreds. Very good. We've got about 10 minutes left, maybe just enough time to look at fractions. Down here I've got some fractions. How do we talk about fractions? Maybe it's not so common now to talk about fractions as it used to be, but we have first of all 1/8. Then we have, notice the pronunciation is an eighth, an eighth, an eighth, a quarter, a third, a half. 3/4, 2/3. What about other fractions? If we had like this one would be 1/5. The others are just like that, 1/5. 1/6, or 2, let's put it 2/6. Actually, I didn't put that, would be a fifth, and this one will be 2/6, and it just goes on, you know. 3/16. 16. Probably you're not going to use these too much now, because most things now, especially in Europe, in Europe and in the United Kingdom, they are not used so much, because in Europe you use metric. In the United Kingdom, which has been in the European community for like 30 or 40 years, everything is metric. So normally we use decimal points, but if you are in the USA, they will still measure things using feet and inches, and they will, you know, drill things for engineering things, everything like that is 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch. Everything is measured using that. So if you're in the USA, this is more important, because in Britain now it's more like to use these ones, the decimals. So the decimals obviously are much easier, but there is a difference. I don't want to use any Spanish because there's no Spanish, but there is a difference between Spanish and maybe some other languages, because when we say decimals in English, for example, we say 0.1. 0.1 would be this one. Also, we could say 0.1. 0 is this, but the 0 is more British English. 0 is synonymous with 0. Here I put them together, 0, 0. So this is very easy for you. It's 0.1 or 0.1. But then it gets different from Spanish, for example, because here we would say 0.13. After the decimal point, we need to say each digit individually. It's not correct to say 0.13. You cannot say 0.13. it's 0.13 or 0.13. Maybe you would hear that in the United Kingdom. What else? Here's another example. 0.1374. You need to say each digit individually. 0.1374. Another example, 10.2356. 10.2356. Notice that this is called a point, but if you're looking at a web address, I can promote my own website here. It's a good excuse to promote my own website. Inglés con... yeah, that's Spanish, but I have to because it is in Spanish. Richard.com. So here in the point here, when we're talking about websites, this is pronounced dot. D-O-T, dot. Inglesconrichard.com. But when we're talking about decimals, we say point, not dot. Point. So, very good. The only other thing that I had today was, let's move this over here, percentages. Percentages, very easy. We just say 100%, actually, yeah, percent, just like this, or 75%. And I think that's it. I did have some more material, some vocabulary today, but I'm not going to start it because we've only got 3 minutes left, so it's time to finish. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully will be another class next Tuesday at about the same time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.